Today on the show, we have Emma Pace, your local Toronto expert.
Another exciting update in not so exciting market, I would say. The theme, I think, for this month is like we've actually seen some stability. I don't know how long that's going to last for, given potential future rate increases. But we've actually seen some stability in the marketplace for the first time in the last little while. So it's been relatively nice to see. Anybody that's trying to make plans for 2023 or 2024 and trying to say like when is the right time, I think like whether you buy here or whether you buy here or here or here, you're probably going to be fine when it comes down to 2026, as long as you again have that long-term vision.
Welcome everybody back to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. I am Danni Migueis from Realtor Realtor in Barrie. I'm a realtor and investor. And today on the show, we have Emma Pace, your local Toronto expert.
Awesome.
Hi,
Thanks,
Emma.
Danny. I appreciate it.
No problem. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to hop into the numbers for another month on the channel. It's been just over 24 months, I think, is what we've been doing it after chatting with Pete there. So another exciting update in not so exciting market, I would say.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, no, totally. So why don't we hop right into the numbers? And I guess just before we do that, again, if you're new to watching my market update as a viewer, I've obviously been on the channel for quite some time. There are two things that our audience typically finds value in. And the links will be in the description below. So every single week, we will send out a list of Toronto's most affordable properties. So we segment that into the most affordable condos and the most affordable freehold properties. So if you're looking to figure out kind of like what that threshold is from an affordability perspective, you can sign up for that list below and we'll send those out every week. Those would be for both investors and for end users. So if you're looking to move into the property yourself. And then the second thing that a lot of our viewers find value in is our investment. I said condo of the week, but we've actually been switching up with some multifamilies as well. So if you're an investor and you want to get like professionally analyzed deals by my team, we send them out every single Friday on like our favorite one that we've analyzed throughout the week. What
a great tool to have for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? At the end of the day, I think most people, and especially something that I want to talk about in this particular segment, is like most people that are watching this right now are not in a position where they're, pulling the trigger by the end of the year. They're probably trying to ramp up to figure out what the best move is going to be for them in 2023, maybe 2024, just kind of given what's going on with like the economic environment and with the market overall. And so I find these tools are super, super helpful because if you just check in on them, maybe it's not every week, maybe it's every other week, or even if you're checking in on them once a month, you kind of have your finger on the pulse. And it's something that our team manually pulls. So you know that you're getting it straight from the source. We do this every day. There's 6 of us. So it just kind of gives you, again, a finger on the pulse for kind of what's going on in the marketplace. So if you're interested in either of those, the link is in the description below. And again, we'll send those out every single week. So let's hop into the market activity in Toronto. Because this is the first one that you posted, Danny, I like to kind of break this down generally. So normally the way that the presentation will typically go is we'll do some general market updates and we'll go through some really important key metrics in the marketplace, like what's happening with listings, how many properties are selling, that kind of thing. Then we'll talk about the condo market a little bit, and then we'll talk about the rental market. So I like to break it down as a little bit of a funnel there for you guys. So let's talk about the year over year and the month over month performance. So from September to October, and again, I like to keep this on a month-over-month basis, we actually saw condo prices drop about almost 4%. So the average condo price last month was about $770, and it's dropped to about $740. Condo townhouses they've gone up about 3.5% or just north of that. And they were listed at 831 and now they're at 863. So this would be the average price point as of October. Semis stayed relatively flat. I mean, we were kind of within 1% range there, but they basically went from 1.1 to 1.2. And then detached properties went from 1.58 to 1.6. So overall, I would say not a crazy amount of movement in the Toronto market. We've been following this for the last little while. To see 6% price reductions and all of that kind of stuff was not out of the ordinary. So the theme, I think, for this month is like we've actually seen some stability. I don't know how long that's going to last for, given potential future rate increases. But we've actually seen some stability in the marketplace for the first time in the last little while. So it's been relatively nice to see. And then if we're looking at a year-over-year basis, detached properties are down about 10%. Semis are down about 8% from this time last year. Condo towns are down about 3%, and condo apartments are flat. So if you bought a condo last year at this time, there's probably not been a whole heck of a lot of change to your overall price. Cool.
Wow, those are some great numbers. I mean, it's nice to see that, yes, the prices haven't gone up drastically, but they're not in that red like your condo prices. They're like detached homes, that's a great.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I like to say is you do kind of have to take these numbers with a bit of a grain of salt because we just don't have a lot of volume right now.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen a lot of volatility in terms of like overall prices. I think the market has kind of digested these higher interest rates, where we were seeing the market pull back and be a little bit more fearful when they were doing more aggressive interest rate increases that we hadn't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
But when it comes to thinking like the market's completely back because now we're seeing price increases, I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think some agents would maybe look at these numbers and say, oh, prices are up because most agents are just not doing a lot of transactions right now. But if I'm being like very truthful to the general marketplace, I think we just don't have a lot of trade volume. And so you don't have a lot of condo sales, and then one big massive sale happens for $5 million. It can, it can skew the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So I always like to break it down in comparison to the suburban regions of the GTA as well. So Durham region, and I think what is the most interesting is normally if something's within a 1% range or variance, I try to keep it yellow because I don't think that's like really much of, it's not a ton of movement. So you see that Durham finally, this is actually for the first time, I believe, has broke 900,000 as the average price point to the downside. So we were kind of hovering between 9 and 950 for the last couple of months. And now we're at 893. So we finally reached that 900K average price point. So Durham came down about 2%. Peel was, pretty standard. We were at like $1,044,000, we're at $1,036,000. So not a whole heck of a lot of movement there. Halton was at 1.23, we're at 1.22. So not a whole heck of a lot of movement there. Toronto went up a little bit, but again, not a whole heck of a lot. We were at like $1,061,000 to $1,093,000, and then York region stayed the same, which was 1.246 to 1.258. So not like a whole heck of a lot of movement when we zoom things out. But if you look, like I said, I think kind of the theme of today is, overall stability. Like a lot of these, you see a little bit of movement, but not a whole heck of a lot of movement. A lot of them are just kind of trading sideways.
Yeah.
So if we look at where prices were at the peak of the market, which for most places was February 2022, Durham has basically come down about 27% from the peak of the market to current prices. Peel has come down about 21% from the top or peak pricing. Halton's down about 20, and then Toronto's down about 10 almost.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've seen a little bit of I guess you could say a bit of a price reduction for some of these places. Yeah. But we're not seeing a month over month drastic drops like we were earlier in 2022 at this point. And then if we look and we break down Toronto and how each segment of the market has performed, condos have come down about 10% from the top. Condo towns have come down about 11% from the top. Semis about 18%, and then detached about 22%. when we're looking at February prices to current prices.
So some great numbers still though, right?
Yeah. I mean, overall, look, I think if you bought, if you bought anywhere in the last couple of years, you're probably still doing all right. But I think ultimately, if you see these numbers and it gives you a bit of anxiety because you're somebody who purchased in February, again, like I never have the mentality of being short-sighted with real estate. And when we go through some of the important metrics in a second, and I kind of paint the picture of my predictions for the future, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just going off the research that I've done. And, if we go through kind of the predictions for 2023 and 2024, I think it'll alleviate some of those concerns because, it's just inherent human nature. Like if you see this and the price of your property is down, it doesn't make you feel good. That's for sure. But I think if you have a long-term vision for real estate and you believe in the location that you've purchased in and the immigration targets and, the supply metrics and all of that kind of stuff, you don't have too much to be concerned about as long as you have a long-term vision for holding that property.
Yeah, for sure. And as long as you love it, right?
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about some of those important metrics. Overall, our months of inventory metric is about 2.6%. Now, one thing that I do want to just say is this particular graph, it takes into consideration Toronto Metro. So one thing that I would strongly advise, and I think is more important now than ever, is if you are looking in a particular neighborhood, you should be running these numbers for your neighborhood specific, because there are still some neighborhoods in Toronto particularly that don't have a lot of inventory. Again, inventory is down, and some of these neighborhoods, because they don't see a whole heck of a lot of turnover, still have pretty tremendous demand. Like I know clients of ours bought a place in Seton Village, which is a fairly highly in demand neighborhood downtown, and it still went in multiple offers, right? Because there just isn't a whole heck of a lot of great inventory that turns over. So because we're already at suppressed levels, and then you don't have a lot of great homes that typically pop up, there's still demand for those particular ones. So I would say have a look. This is a pretty zoomed out version, but if you're active in the marketplace, you should have a more zoomed in version as to what's going on in your particular neighborhood to see how it's performing.
Yeah, and that's why they're going to call Emma, and she's going to zoom into that neighborhood.
I hope so. But yeah, so our months of inventory, as far as this looks like it's trending between a balanced market and a buyer's market. So we have 2.6 months of inventory. And so just so you guys know, there's a little description down here as well. And this is from one of my favorite, resources to find data. And his name's Zealand, and he runs a report every single month. So if you're kind of a bit of a data nerd like I am and like to read blog posts and reports, I would very strongly suggest checking him out on a monthly basis. But just so you guys know what months of inventory means, because it is an important metric, it shows how many months are required to absorb that current inventory at the current level of monthly sales. So essentially, to break this down into very plain English, if there were no more homes that hit the market, it would take approximately 2.6 months for all of the existing inventory that's on the market to be absorbed. Cool. So if this number is lower, then it means that it's a stronger market because all of those homes would be absorbed more quickly. And if this number continues to go up, then it means the market is more soft because homes aren't selling as quickly and it takes longer for them to be absorbed off the marketplace. Cool. And then if you look at sales to new listings ratio, this is how many sales are happening in comparison to new listings that happen in any given month. So we're only looking at about 41% of new properties that are hitting the market selling at this point in time. Mm-hmm. So I think looking at both of these, it can seem a little bit, it can look like there's maybe a little bit of disparity. And that's why I think it's important that you look in your particular neighborhood to see, hey, is everything that's hitting the market selling really, really quickly? Or is everything that's hitting the market sitting around for a long period of time? How much time do I have to search? Or if I'm a seller, how long should I actually expect that my property is going to be on the market? Is it 30 days or less? Is it 60 to 90? Just so you have the right expectations and can make the right plans moving forward, especially in a slower season. We're recording this in November. I think November and December are going to be quite slow this year. So just make your plans accordingly.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, just to give everybody an idea of kind of average price across Toronto right now, the Trev median price is about $940,000. So if you are looking for a freehold property under $1 million, there's quite a few of them. You have quite a few options. It's just important to understand, and we'll look at interest rate projections in a second here. Just because you're purchasing at a lower purchase price doesn't mean your actual affordability or your monthly expenses are lower. In most cases right now, you're purchasing at a lower price, meaning that your land transfer tax might be lower as well. That's a kind of like an ancillary benefit of it. But your overall borrowing cost of paying your mortgage is actually probably slightly more than what it would be at just over $1 million.
And I think that's very important for people to understand, because right now all those buyers are thinking, oh, prices are decreasing, and they're thinking, and then they go get their pre-approval and they're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, I actually feel for the general marketplace. And I think that's why it's really important that we do these videos and we try and educate people about it, because some people just assume, like, I'm going to just buy off the peak, or I don't want to buy at the peak, which is totally fair. And I can promise you right now, if you're purchasing in today's market, you're probably not buying at the peak.
Yes.
But for most people, the overall purchase price typically isn't the biggest driver for them. Like, especially with me dealing with buyers, it's normally the monthly payment. So one of the questions that we ask when we do strategy calls with our clients, and essentially what a strategy call is understanding their needs and wants, and then going through the data in the marketplace to help us drive a decision as to like whether or not this move even makes sense for them in their future. So can we build a strategy with them around data to make us as a team feel confident that we're going to be able to help them accomplish their goals? And one of the questions that we always ask is, like, we don't really care about the purchase price. Let's work backwards from an affordability perspective, because housing is likely the largest expense that you have if you kind of break it out into categories on a monthly basis. But there's absolutely nothing worse than being like, well, I guess I can't do anything else than live in this house now, right? If you're moving somewhere, maybe you're moving to an amazing location, or you have a particular location that you want to move into because like it's vibrant and there's tons of restaurants, especially if we think about Toronto, and then you go and buy this house and you're like, oh, I guess I can't even like enjoy the amenities that I desired when I moved here.
Yes.
So I think it's really, really important to put into context that just because you have a lower purchase price, it doesn't mean that your actual monthly costs are lower. There could be more. So I often like to start with the monthly cost, because you're going to see that purchase price typically once if you lived in that house for 25 years, but you're going to see that monthly expense every single month. And so you just need to make sure that you're comfortable with that.
Oh, awesome. It's a great way to look at it, and it's a great way to keep your clients and future clients in perspective of the outcome, right?
Yeah, totally. So let's look at what happened from September to October. And so typically we do see a little bit of a bump up in activity in the fall market. So just for any viewers that are watching this, and I'll show you this kind of in a second, but from a seasonality perspective, in terms of like when is real estate the hottest, or like when do things actually happen in real estate? Spring market, so we'll say usually somewhere between March and June or July, is typically the hottest season, where you'll have the most trades and the most activity, most homes on the market, that kind of thing. And then you have fall, so right after Labor Day until first snowfall, which we're seeing now. And then you typically have the summer months, because people are on vacation and kids are out of school and all that kind of stuff, so it's not usually too hot, maybe from a weather perspective, but not a real estate perspective. And then you have the winter. So normally we would see a little bit of a bump up in terms of activity in September and October, but just given kind of what's going on with the current market conditions, we didn't quite see that this year. However, we didn't actually see a pullback in terms of prices. So we pretty much saw a leveling off from average home price in September to October. Obviously it went up slightly, like $3,000, not a whole heck of a lot, but it's not uncommon to see prices, over the last 20 years, prices have only declined from September to October twice.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I thought this was really, really interesting, because I think, when you read the media, it's very scary, right? Like, they do a great job of capturing our attention with their headlines. Like that's their job, and they're doing a great job of that. But I think when we put into context what's actually happened over the last quarter, and we look at July, August, September, October, so we take into consideration some summer months where things are usually slower, and we take into consideration the fall market, the average home price for the GTA hasn't really moved that much. And that's kind of why I wanted this concept of stability today, is that we've actually seen things for the most part, if you just have like a zoomed out look, it's been relatively stable across the board. We haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of movement one way or the other over the last 4 months when it comes to average pricing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's look at that, sales to new listings ratio is something that we talked about earlier. So I just kind of wanted to put this into perspective. It is very common from September to October to see listings decline. And I'm going to show you that that's even more common in November, December in a second. So we saw a 7.5% new listing reduction coming off about 11,000, which was already very, very, very low in comparison to most Septembers. I mean, look at 2020. Obviously, that was an abnormal year, but 20,000 listings. Yeah. So it's not uncommon to see us be somewhere in like the 14 to 15,000 new listings range for September, where we had about 11,000 in September this year. And then if you look at October, it's not abnormal to see about 13,000 listings or so. We'll say 13,500 to 14,000, and we saw about 10,000. So we're trending at a pretty significant, reduced volume of new listings hitting the market. And that's why if you're an active buyer and you're watching this video and you're like, there's nothing out there for me, like, not crazy. Like, there's not a lot out there for you.
Especially for the GTA, right?
Yeah. So I think, people get frustrated with their agents, or sometimes they get frustrated with themselves. Like, am I doing something wrong? Is there something more that I can be doing? There's a couple little strategies that we use with our clients to help expand that inventory level, or to try and find some maybe not so obvious options that could fit in their criteria. Like one little hack just for you guys, if you're watching this. If there's something outside of your budget, so let's say your budget's $900K, then look at properties that have been on the market for more than 30 days that are slightly above your budget. Maybe they're at $925, maybe they're at $950. I've seen a lot of good options sitting on the market. But you're probably thinking, well, I've been conditioned over the last couple of years that I can't negotiate with people. I can't ask for a price reduction. But I know, having dealt with so many sellers, that after 30 days, they're usually like, where are the offers? I need to see something. So don't be afraid to try and be creative with bringing additional properties into your criteria. You don't just have to look at the properties that are at or under your budget to try and find some more options. But if you are feeling stressed, or you are feeling like you're running out of options, my only advice is you have to be more patient in today's market for the right home to pop up, because there are not as many homes popping up. It might take you twice as long for the proper home to pop up, just given how many new homes are coming to market.
Yeah. And on the flip side, it might take you twice as long to sell that home that you have listed, right?
100%. And you have to be very realistic. I think it's like a whole other training about price point and motivation and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything wrong if your home isn't trading within 30 days. Again, you just have to look at your little micro market, what's moved, how are you positioned in comparison to the rest of the competition in the marketplace? Are you overpriced? Do you have features that are better? Do you have features that are maybe not so some unsavory features? You should be honest about that to make sure you can get your home sold in today's market.
Yeah.
So if we look at 10,000, we'll say 10,400, so 10,390 new listings, we had 4,961 sales that actually happened. Right? So if you look at that again, and we look at the numbers in comparison to the last 20 years in the GTA for September and October, 5,000 sales in a traditional market where we're probably seeing somewhere between 8,000 to 9,000. We're not running at 50%, but it's probably somewhere in around 60 to 65% of what we're typically trending at. And then the same thing for October, to see somewhere between 7,000 to 8,000, and we're trending at just under 5,000 again, running at similar numbers. So again, not just it's slow out here, guys. There's just not a heck of a lot of movement. And especially if you're somebody that's been following the real estate market for like 3 years, you're looking at numbers like 11,000. That was way more than we had ever seen. 9,000 is still above average, right? So if you're tracking only starting here, this looks pretty brutal. But you also have to put into context that these were also abnormal years that we're coming off of. So you want to look at this with a little bit of a zoomed out lens to see like what's happened over the last 20 years since the beginning of the 2000s.
Yes, there was life in real estate before COVID, right?
There was a lot of life in real estate before COVID. I think we're just
Everyone's so focused on COVID.
Hopefully we're trending back to hopefully we're trending back to the more normal numbers here. I mean, these were like abnormal numbers. This is why there's so many people that got their real estate licenses from an agent. But this is why so many people got their real estate licenses because we were just, we're trending at 20,000 new listings. There's no other 20s that are on this chart here somewhere. So it's like we're going from one extreme to the other, where if you actually put this into context, like it's not usually actually this way. It's not usually it's not usually this way. It's somewhere in and around here. So hopefully that sheds some light on what would be considered a more normal market.
Definitely, that's great information.
Yeah. So if we looking ahead from October to November, because we just talked September to October, prediction wise, or looking back over the last 20 years, it's not uncommon to see prices go down a little bit in October to November. So if you're a seller and you start to see your neighbors taking a little bit of a discount, or if the numbers come out next month and they're not flat again, it's not uncommon to see prices go down. Majority of the time, it's not a massive drop, but the majority of the time over the last 20 years, prices have been lower. The average home price has been lower in November than it has been in October. So we'll find out next month when the
time will tell.
100%. So what I wanted to show you guys, this slide gives me a headache, so I apologize.
I was kind of thinking, where am I supposed to be looking right now?
I'll show you where to look in a second, but what I wanted to show you guys was just kind of like what you can expect, or like when do new listings come to market? Because we just talked a lot about not having a lot of new listings. So you're like, well, when are they coming up is the real question. So as you can see here, what I've done is I've highlighted in this bright purple 2019 and 2020, what usually happens from October to January. So you can just see, I obviously can't zoom in too much on this, but you can just see it drops off the face of the earth for new listings every year, usually from October. So don't expect that you're going to have a ton of new selection by the end of the year if you're a buyer. But then what do you see? February, March, and like I was saying earlier, when it comes to seasonality and buying in the spring, you start to see a drastic uptick at the beginning of the next year, here again, with new inventory. So if you're a buyer looking for a crazy deal right now, and you don't really care as much about the property, and you're solely motivated on price, could be a great time for you to buy. If you're somebody who isn't as price sensitive, that is looking for like your absolute dream home, and you're just trying to find the perfect place for your family, there just might not be a ton of selection for you. You're not doing anything wrong. Cool.
Hang on to those dreams a little bit longer.
Totally. So this is where I think things get kind of interesting. One thing that again, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just trying to formulate where I think we're headed, because it's been, honestly, for lack of a better term, kind of a shitty year for most people, right? It's like it seems like there's just been like this gray cloud over life for like 6 months of, like media announcements, like the market has been slow. And so for me, I'm like, okay, that's great if we're only looking at this time in a vacuum. And I just feel like there hasn't really been a whole heck of a lot of like light at the end of the tunnel for people. They're like, what's happening? When is this going to get better? It just seems like it keeps getting worse. And so looking at this, this is the Fed Watch tool. So this is their predictions for how interest rates are going to pan out in the future. So we have 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Now, I have two charts here that came from two separate entities, and they both have a similar vision for how the interest rate forecasts are likely to head going forward. And so I looked at this, and I just kind of wanted to explain like how I think the story of real estate could potentially pan out over the next couple of years, because a lot of people are going to look at this chart and be like, I don't even know what this means. I'm right? So after looking at this, and again, I don't necessarily think this is going to be bang on the head the exact month that this is going to happen, but if we follow this trend line, these are my like quote unquote predictions for 2023. Again, no crystal ball, can't guarantee anything. But basically, let me just go back here. We're like right here at the time of this recording. We're recording in November, right? So this is the end of 2023. The prediction for both of these charts, again, we're here-ish. The prediction for both of these charts is at the beginning of 2023, we're likely to continue to see rate hikes to help cool down inflation, right? Now, what this means for those of you that are thinking that are price sensitive, like we just talked about, price graphs will usually be the inverse of this. So if that was to happen, I would suspect that prices will likely decrease for potentially the first half of 2023 if we continue to see these rate hikes. Now, again, that doesn't mean your affordability increases. Your affordability still probably goes down as well, but your acquisition cost would probably be quite a bit lower. So if we look on the back half of 2023 and we start to see interest rate reduce, we're probably not looking at getting to where we are right now until potentially the latter half of 2023. Now, this is where like buyer mentality comes into play though, because I think a lot of people just think, look at interest rates in a vacuum, you know, maybe prices follow it, but you also have to consider how do people's emotions factor into it, because that is one of the biggest driving factors. And I think a lot of people try and separate the two, and you can't. It's physically impossible. So what happens is I think we continue to see, you know, prices slide, some more fear, etc. And though rates are higher, as they continue to reduce, this is when you start to see that like buyer confidence come back in the market, that like euphoria of this is over and I better get back into the market, right? Even though the rate that you're paying here may still be higher than what you're paying here. You start to get this positivity fed back into the market because prices are coming down.
Yeah.
I think if you were looking specifically for like the lowest price, I would never suggest trying to time the market, by the way. It's
there is no right time.
Very few people will ever time the market. But if you're like, I need to time the market and I want to buy at the lowest, according to this graph, not according to me, then your best time would probably be somewhere mid-2023 before this turns back around, because you start to get this buyer euphoria and positivity that comes back into the marketplace. So where I think things get really interesting, though, is if we look at 2024 and if we actually see interest rates drop at the same trajectory that they're expecting in both of these graphs, where they after 2024 come down significantly or quite a bit, and we end up getting into, you know, if I was to draw a line across here, we'd be in 2017 or 2018 territory for rates. Well, I know I've been in real estate since 2015. Maybe it's not a whole heck of a lot of time, but it's been for this entirety of this graph.
Yes.
And I know what happened here. Prices were still crazy. We still had, you know, government intervention measures come into play to cool down the market. And so what happens here is maybe, again, hypothetically, we get into a similar territory to what we saw in 2017. And one of the challenges that we have is our immigration target has just recently been announced that it's gone up pretty significantly. And we've had a lot of projects cancel in 2022 because of interest rates. So now we're going to be at a lack of supply. We're going to have a housing shortage in these coming years with more immigration coming in.
Yeah.
And pair those two things with interest rate reductions, we end up getting back into this territory as far as what I can see. And I would love, if anybody wants to combat me on this, please go ahead. I'm open to it. I'm happy to like open up those lines of communication. I'm just making this story and prediction based on like my analysis of this chart. So maybe here, like we talked about, buyer euphoria and sentiment coming back in the marketplace, this might not mean that you get back into like crazy bidding wars or something like that on the back of 2023. But what it means is right now you have leverage of home inspections, the sale of your property might be a condition that you have here while the market is softening and there's more uncertainty for sellers. But you might start to lose some of the leverage that you have in today's market on the back half of 2023 if this happens. I know that when rates were in and around this territory, we still had bidding wars here. So do I suspect that that would likely be the case in 2024, 2025? Maybe, like it could be. But anyways, that's kind of like my brain trying to digest both of these market watch tools. And again, I know somebody's going to drop in the comments and say, this is, this is the Fed. So these are based on, this is based on the Fed in the States, their interest rates, but we tend to follow them relatively closely. So anyways, that was kind of like my breakdown for anybody that's trying to make plans for 2023 or 2024 and trying to say like, when is the right time? I think like whether you buy here or whether you buy here or here or here, you're probably going to be fine when it comes down to 2026, as long as you then have that long-term vision.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're feeling down and out about purchasing in February of 2022 and you're comfortable holding to 2026, I would be on your side for feeling positive about how things are going to pan out for you in the coming years.
Yes, Emma tells you there is light at the end of the tunnel.
I hope so.
2026.
I'm a glass half full person, so I like to think that. But again, I think you got to do your research, and I actually don't think that you should go out and rush to buy something right now. I think you have to do more research now than ever. And I think if somebody tells you to rush out and it's the best deals on the marketplace that you can ever find, it's like you might find motivated sellers, but does it mean that it's actually the right house for you and your family? I don't know. There's not a whole heck of a lot of those on the marketplace right now. So you got to do your research. You have to be patient, but you got to be prepared. Like I think that's kind of that's the good recipe and strategy for success right now.
Yeah, again, it all comes down to those expectations like you spoke of at the beginning, right?
Yep.
Setting them for both sides, sellers and buyers.
Yep. So we talked about that. I just wanted to touch on this quickly. I'm not sure if most people know, but the non-resident speculation tax actually increased October 25th to 25%. So if you're a non-resident of Canada, you don't have PR or anything like that, it used to be 15, it went to 20, and now they've increased it to 25%. So just to make anybody that's watching this video aware. But let's talk about the condo market. So to just kind of level the playing field, because again, I think a lot of people are quite nervous about their purchase. So what I did was I pulled a chart of how the average condo price in Toronto has performed over the last year, or since January, sorry. If we look at January, the average price was $768. If we look at November, it's $744. So we've seen, if you bought in February, March, or April, you're probably down a little bit. But for the most part, if I just drew this line across here, we're kind of hovering above and below that line. So, don't read too, you don't day trade real estate. Do this for the long term. So don't try and check your price point every single day. Have a peek at it like we like to do with our clients, a real estate health check twice a year. Like, this is kind of where you're at. This is kind of where you're at. Don't spend too much time trying to analyze every single detail, because you're not putting the home on the market. And if you are, then we need to look at the details of that.
Yeah, you're going to lose sleep if they do that.
Yeah, 100%. So don't read too far into it. It's totally fine. If we look at the Toronto condo numbers, Toronto West, the average price point, so that's over here in this purple graph, is $671,000. If you're looking to get into the condo market or you're looking to sell, this is kind of average price point over there. Last month was $669, so not a whole heck of a lot of movement. Central, which is primarily comprised of CO1 and CO8, and then CO7 and C14. There's another decent cluster of condos up here. The average price point, there went from $827 to $788. So it looks like it's down about 4%, but again, not as much volume. And then if we look at the East, 622,000. Last month was 626. So pretty steady, not a whole heck of a lot of movement there. And then if we look at, these are the most condo dense neighborhoods. So this is everything, but these are the most condo dense neighborhoods. So Mimico, CO1, which is West Downtown, CO8, East Downtown, CO7 and C14, and then Scarborough Town Center. CO1, you're looking at buying about $845. CO8, you can buy, it could be almost $100,000 gap in the downtown core, depending on where you want to go. So there's some good opportunities there. CO7, you're looking at about almost $700K, $689. W06, which is Mimico, you're looking at about $814 as the average price, and EO9, 550. So investors, what I would say is don't sleep on E09. I think Scarborough gets his bad rap from the name is stigmatized perspective, but the rents versus the purchase price are quite good. Like you're looking at almost downtown rents in Scarborough at, 70% of the price, 75% of the price. So don't sleep on Scarborough.
E09.
E09. There you go. And then so this is probably like my most interesting slide. The rental market has been absolutely insane in Toronto over the last couple of months. And we've been tracking this for, I think, 20 months now. And definitely over the last 8, we've seen at least a $50 to $80 monthly increase for this segment of the market. And I keep it very tight knit. Like I wanted to keep it at under 100 data points here. So finally, we were at 2861 last month. We had less volume, so there's a lot less volume in terms of rental activity, which is common for this time of year. And we're at 2859, so $2 differential.
Wow.
Prices seem to have flattened off in this particular region, at least for the time being. So that makes me happy for tenants. Investors, you might think the opposite, but still a decent chunk of change for 1 bedroom plus den, almost $2,900. So you're looking pretty good there.
Yes.
But if we look at seasonality, just to kind of before we wrap this up, for investors out there, for anybody that's looking to rent, it's not uncommon to see things flatten off. So you'll typically, again, see a little bit of a pickup in January. It's fairly similar to what we see on the sales side of things. Like very few people want to move. Like human beings don't want to move in the middle of winter in Canada. So you might see quite a bit of activity when it comes to spring and summer for the most part. And then it becomes less savory for people to move in November and January. So this is kind of when you typically see, prices pull up and come back a little bit. So if you're looking to rent and you want to get a discount because the market's been crazy, might actually be a good time for you to look. Kind of sucks to move in the winter, but you might get a better price. And if you are a landlord and you don't have to rent until March, April, or May, maybe you make the choice not to rent because you might be able to get a little bit more money.
Wow. That is awesome.
For you guys today.
That's all you got. That was a lot. Like I feel like I'm still in the crystal ball here of almost future.
I like that. Yeah, so I didn't mean to drop too many predictions on you. I was just wanted to spew my thoughts there.
No, my gosh, there was a ton of information. I am like the complete opposite. You are the guru, obviously, on your stats and charts, where I would rather listen to you tell me because now it's stored, it's there. It was great information.
Thank you.
Honestly, it was amazing to learn about Toronto because I am very north of you there, not, time-wise, but it feels like a whole other real estate world.
Yeah.
So Emma, how can they find you? If they want to get in touch with you and your team.
Contact me is on Instagram at Pace of Base is my handle on Instagram. Or again, the links below, sign up there. You'll get an email instantaneously from me. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer any that you've got. And yeah, that would be the best way to contact me.
Awesome. So if you guys want to go a deep dive into the crystal ball, contact Emma with the links below or on Instagram. And make sure you like and subscribe here on our Canadian Real Estate channel. And it was great getting to know you and hearing all about the stats, Emma.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I appreciate it.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too.